Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first ever episode of the podcast. And here for my inaugural interview is close friend and mentor Eric Lochtefeld. Eric, thank you so much for agreeing to take part in this experiment and the first up to bat.
You're welcome, Chris, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So, in terms of exits, if I get this right, you're no stranger to the exit. In fact, having navigated more than one. So, was it the Vans Warped Tour was first, and then University of Dreams, followed by the
Mhm.
Feds, or
The company that worked with founding the Vans Warped Tour was Grassroots Event Marketing, which was a sponsorship agency. That was my first company.
uh-huh.
But I wouldn't describe that as one of my exits, no. So I've started probably about 29, 30 companies,
Uh-huh.
and I've successfully exited maybe a dozen. Some are just real estate holding companies that I still have to this day.
Hmm.
And then others weren't companies I even tried to exit. I just moved on from.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I've got my fair share of exits though, for sure.
No doubt. Yeah, so I don't know exactly which one to target in on, but maybe it makes sense to be like the first one. But we will, I guess, feel free to kind of share your experiences in relation to any of those exits. What was I guess, yeah, why don't we start with the first one? What was
Well, actually, Chris, the one that will be most helpful and that the audience will probably appreciate the most and that you might remember is the transition from running my big theater business to starting Bliss Champions, because that was my largest exit
yeah.
and definitely tapped into the emotions that you've been experiencing and maybe your audience members will relate to as well.
Yeah, no doubt. Awesome. Okay, cool. Well then, yeah, let's talk about that. How did you start that company before we get to the exit? Like, what's the origin story
Yeah,
of that
so
company itself?
I had a global company that I was the CEO of, and every 2 years we were growing so much, I had to find new office space. And in the Bay Area and Silicon Valley in particular, that was more challenging than you might realize. Everybody was always duking it out for B office space if they weren't at the A office space echelon. So
Right.
B office space in America, guys, is just the shittier, more eclectic space, right? That you
Right.
make your own. A office space is like where Deloitte and Touche goes and all the big firms, right?
Yeah.
So I was tiring of having to find new office space all the time, and but I also had a wonderful company that I loved, and I want to have a specialist space. And one day, one of my longest running mentees, Chris Duggan, ran into the office. He was working for me at that time with a newspaper that said that the Fox Theater was for sale. And the Fox Theater was just 3 blocks away from our corporate headquarters. And I knew that in addition to great office space, excellent B office space, a variety that would be more than we would need that we could grow into, they also had a historic theater. And Chris knew about me that I romanticized about theaters. And we weren't quite clear what that would ever mean someday, but I used to talk about it all the time. That I used to go on field trips with my grammar school to the opera and the symphony, and I couldn't care less what was happening on stage. But I love those theaters, and I would just stare at the ceilings and I would romanticize about something someday, but I didn't know what. And so when the entire city block was up for sale, basically, with the office space my company needed from a practical standpoint, and something that had been a dream of mine for quite some time had been brewing, became available, I sprinted down and I started pounding on the door like a wild man and trying to reach.
Literally? Or what?
Yeah, because the guy he was being foreclosed on basically,
All right.
and it said in the article he just needed $1 million in order to, not just, but he needed $1 million to save it. Right?
Huh.
Clearly, it was worth more than that. But I was naively pounding on the window, and one of his assistants came and said, "Oh, he'll come see you later at your office." And he shows up like 5, 6 hours later, and he kind of big timed me, and he's like, "Oh, everyone, because they read this article, thinks they could save this theater for just $1 million. It's so naive. There's like $10 million owed in loans and blah, blah, blah. And I have this friend and that friend from this tech firm and that tech firm gonna save me. And anybody that thinks they can buy this place for $1 million is naive." So I kind of heard him out. I had $1 million that I had saved up from building a global company. I was prepared to use it, And long story short, 5 months later, I bought his entire property out of foreclosure for $1 million down. And
That's
then
crazy.
I financed a loan for 5 million. So he was wrong. And ultimately, instead of just helping him and becoming a partner and supporting him, I ended up absorbing the whole thing. And so I ended up moving my global company into the office space above. And then I took over this huge live entertainment theater, 1,200 seats. It also had a live entertainment nightclub for baby boomers. Believe it or not, there's a nightclub for baby boomers. It exists in this world, and it is in Redwood City, California.
Yeah,
So
fun place
I
to
gave
visit.
that to my brother, and my wife and I started operating as concert promoters and as a private venue rental, because it was really the largest venue in Silicon Valley that could be rented, that wasn't on some campus or something. So we were immediately getting, the Facebooks and the Googles and the Oracles and the Apples renting our theater for their big grandiose meetings or parties. And so we just did live events and private events for about a decade. And there came a time after 9 years where somebody asked us, would you ever sell this place? And we bought it with 1 million of our own cash and 5 million in debt. And we said, well, everybody has a walkaway price, right? Isn't that the first thing that, sellers of businesses start to think about? And what would that price be? Well, we had no intention of selling. So we just did what some people do, which is we laughed and said, ha ha ha, 20 million.
Uh,
We bought it for 6. And long story short, within 3 months of that, I had an LOI. My wife and I had an LOI for 20 million. So funny what you put out in the universe there. So all of a sudden we're in these hardcore negotiations to sell. I don't know that an enormous amount of thought went into what we were going to do after. But after running, 120 events and concerts a year and getting home at midnight, 120 days a year, we were tired because after 9 years, there's a fair amount of exhaustion and burnout from that. But we were
yeah.
still going strong, and we were doing other things in the city that were very, very lucrative. We were building a skyscraper and getting our hands in other real estate. But it went through and we sold. And then this is the funny part that you'll now remember and connect the dots to, is that I went home and I said, I'm not going to do anything for the rest of the year. It was March when it finally closed. And the days started to tick. My wife was already running off, starting another company the next day. I went outside and put sunblock on, and I was going to get tan by the pool and read a book, and started to talk to a couple of my mentees, and they're like, yeah, this isn't going to go very well for you. And I'm like, what do you mean? I can do nothing really, really well. Well, I made it about 7 days, Chris, before I was just felt like the world was passing me by. Like,
Yeah.
I was no longer relevant. I was wealthy. I had a killer house. I had a nice backyard, but I got tan after the first day. I didn't need the 6 more days after that. So I kind of started feeling anxious, and I'm not a guy that typically feels anxiety very much. And that was when I saw a video by our mutual friend Patrick Combs talking about Bliss. And then before you know it, I had my next idea. And so I started a company called Bliss Champions, which was a coaching business for people just like me, right? Like just like you're stepping into, what do you do after an exit? What are all those emotions that go on with it? And so I was better served by having those 7 days, but to really, really think about what I wanted to do next rather than just leaping into some other, you
Yeah.
know,
But you moved quickly. It only took you 7 days to dial it
I
in, huh?
did, but I moved intentionally. What most people make the mistake is they get scared by that, and they scare in the wrong direction, which is going back to doing what they were doing before
Yeah.
because that's all they know,
Uh-huh.
right? I didn't do that. I heard the Pied Piper on Bliss and decided to go down that wonderful rabbit hole, right? So
So what was it
um,
that caught your ear, hearing Patrick talk about bliss?
because our narrative with each other was always centered around dreams. So at first I thought it was a sacrilege that he was using a word different than dreams. And then I didn't really know the word. I'd heard the people say bliss before, but I wasn't a Joseph Campbell follower yet.
Yeah.
And I really had to pay attention. And Ultimately, what I think about most entrepreneurs is we're linear thinkers. So we start a business either to change the world or change ourselves. We get in there, and in the first couple of years, busting our hump, we finally come to a point where we have a desire. And that desire is financial freedom, is usually the first one in the linear way. So we work really, really hard to get financial freedom. And then, if your business starts to do well, your best years are usually years 3 through 8. We start to have a little bit more money, and maybe we have an expense account with the company. We can drive a nicer car, upgrade our rental, or if we're living in a home, we can take better trips. But then we start to feel like, gosh, I really thought I'd feel differently once I had financial freedom, once I met that desire. And that's when you realize, oh, there's a second desire that I need, and that's time freedom, right? So freedom of time. Then you
Mhm.
work harder and harder and harder, and you get that. And usually that means replacing yourself in key roles and stuff like that. But then you test it out and go on a vacation in the Caribbean, and you're on your phone the whole time, right? So you're not really free of time. So then you realize, well, there's an asterisk to this. Nobody told me time freedom without guilt would be better. And that would be going to Necker Island and leaving your phone at home, right? And
Mhm.
having a great experience over there and really being in the moment, in the present, in the moment. But then you get back and you're like, God, I thought I'd feel different. That was fun, but I feel
So
like I'm missing something. And
to,
that's
to
the
yeah,
final thing that we focused in on is what entrepreneurs do in that linear way of thinking is they're just checking the boxes, right? So they get their financial freedom, they get their time freedom, but they don't realize they sacrifice their joy to do it.
yeah.
So
But
the
this
third
takes me
thing is
back,
joy.
Eric, like to your moment by the pool, because in that moment you had financial freedom and time freedom. And it
And I
was
had to, and
unrestricted
I,
time freedom. Like you could turn your phone off, right? You could go into
yeah,
Necker for a month. And
yeah, I had achieved that, but I didn't have joy. I was
right.
sitting there, and with each passing day, I was getting more and more restless, and it was unsettling.
Yeah.
And I started feeling anxious, alone, all of these emotions, right? So I didn't have joy. And so when I heard the word bliss, which is essentially going after your joy with purpose,
Yeah.
I got very, very excited. And I saw that as the missing ingredient. I didn't believe I needed another company. What I needed was to pursue joy. It just so happened as an entrepreneur, I had ideas on how to pursue joy within the framework of a business.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but there's another. So you get joy and you think you're golden, and you are golden. You're way better off with joy than just financial freedom and time freedom. But you get joy, and then you realize what you need to work on is peace, right? And that's when I started to add a presence practice. So if you can bring all of those elements into the equation, you're going to find a person that's probably very comfortable, got a lot of joy, a lot of peace in their heart, not much anxiety, and they might be able to float through the world as an entrepreneur, or maybe they're not an entrepreneur anymore.
Yeah. So you started Bliss Champions,
Yeah.
and how was that?
It was a coaching business. It was not hard for me to start it up. Getting good at coaching uh, was the challenge, right? So, fortunately, I had a business partner, Patrick Combs, in the Motivational Speaking Hall of Fame, and just an outstanding coach. And so, I was able to learn in real time, basically. So that was fantastic. So it wasn't too intimidating. I came into coaching thinking I should go take some continuing ed classes at Stanford in psychology. And what was really interesting for me is as I got into coaching, while I could not name the patterns and habits I was seeing of my customers like a psychologist would be able to clinically, they were so obvious. And so that part of it was really encouraging. Like, oh, this person has a scarcity mindset. I don't know what a psychologist would call that, but I do know it's the opposite of an abundance mindset, which I've always had. So
Yeah.
now I have something to bring to the table, right? So I was rich in experience, but not rich in coaching. Patrick had been a coach for some time, so we co-coached, which is unique. There's not a lot of co-coaching environments out there in personal development,
Yeah.
and what I was also able to bring to the table was decades of event experience. So I was a very experienced event guy. So we navigated towards retreats, and so It was a very joyful business. I didn't need to make money. I was set for life after my big exit. So money was not much of a motivator. Um, More I had to worry about making sure Patrick was getting paid as my partner, and because he was delivering most of the content. But I still found ways to make that work. For instance, I bought a retreat compound in Hawaii. That's why the background you see me in is at one of my properties in Hawaii. And so ultimately, it was a very good business, and I did it for 7 years. We just recently wrapped it up, not because it wasn't doing great, just because we were interested in new challenges.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. So Bliss moves and changes, huh?
I think that once you learn how to go on a bliss journey, that you should keep going on them.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things with all of our classes that I hope people took away was like, hey, we're not teaching you to do one bliss journey. We're teaching you how to do the journey, right? It's up to you to keep picking. So guys like Patrick and I, we're going on 4 or 5 bliss journeys at a time in any given year,
Yeah.
right? Not one in a lifetime,
Yeah.
right? So the people that did get that, it's been really encouraging. So I just came back from a TED talk where the guy that went through our program, he's on his third bliss journey, and now they're so different. One was writing a novel, and now he's saving the silverback gorilla in the Republic of Congo, right?
Yeah.
But he gets
It's
it.
pretty
Like
diverse.
the process was the same, right?
Yeah. So what's the beginning of the process for discerning a new bliss journey? Like if you're talking to somebody who's just sold their company and they have no idea what to do next.
Well, yeah. So we have a lot of experience in that because that was kind of our expertise. I would tell you the first thing is you got to let go of the past. And so the biggest thing holding up entrepreneurs to sell their business is the legacy portion of it. Just drawing comparisons to everything in the present moment with yesterday, right? So the first thing is just to let go of that past. That was a role you played to be the founder of that company and build that company. You took with it all the wisdom and all the skills and all the experience, but it was simply a role and it doesn't confine you. And so that's the thing is most people, their next thing that they want to do is often very, very different than what they did before. And they put up mental blocks and boundaries that are unnecessary. Like, let me give an example. I want to be an artist, right? But before I was a hard charging CEO, and they said, well, okay, I'm going to be an artist, but I have to make as much as I made as a CEO. So that, for instance, is a boundary. We all know that what actually decides your level of income from anything is your level of mastery, right? So you're kind of skipping some steps there. How many years did it take you to become a successful
Right.
CEO? And now you want to be an artist overnight at the CEO level. So these are really just
So that's humbling,
excuses.
right? That's incredibly humbling for somebody who's kind of
Yeah.
like exited at one level of success and they kind of like got to start with beginner's mind.
Beginner's mind. And not many people are willing to do that. I can't tell you how many times I've walked away from massive salaries and started all over again. So, you know, if you're not willing to do that, then what you're really doing is just providing an acceptable excuse to not find the courage to do what it is that you really want to do.
Yeah.
Oh, it's more lucrative for me just to stay in marketing rather than go pursue the thing that I really want to do, right? Instead of just bringing your marketing skill set with you. So I just always bring the skill sets from the past with me and the experiences. I don't live in the past. So people ask me about the Warped Tour. I barely remember it. I was 25 years old. I was in and out within 3 years. Yes, it went on to be the longest running music festival of all time, but I don't hang my hat on it. It's like 18 companies ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the biggest thing is give yourself some grace and give yourself a little time too when you exit a company. Don't rush in because what a lot of people do is they just rinse and repeat. I call that being on the escalator where you don't know anything but to stay on the escalator. Be willing to jump off the escalator and start all over.
Yeah.
Um,
What
but
do you what
let's not pretend like an experienced entrepreneur with resources is the same as starting over. It's not quite the same, is it?
no.
Than being a 22-year-old when I started my first company with nothing,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
exactly.
So these are just mental blocks. They're just mindset problems that need to be worked through.
Yeah. Yeah. And so what What are your current Bliss journeys?
My current Bliss journeys is I have two properties in Hawaii. One property I just spent the last 9 months, a year, raising capital to convert it from a retreat compound, which I ran for many years, into a boutique luxury hotel. So for the first time in my life, I built an amazing swimming pool with an ocean view. I created a trail down to a beach on a property next door that I optioned, renovated hotel rooms. So I've never done any of these things before. So I just spent the last year doing that. And we opened the boutique hotel. It's called Hamakua Hotel on the big island of Hawaii. And it's doing really well. We're like 9 months in, and it's really popular, and we're really excited. And about 8 minutes away, I have probably the best short-term rental property on the eastern side of the Big Island, and that's the Waterfalling Estate. People joke and call it the Beaver House because when Justin Bieber was being bad in his late teens, he rented it for a month and threw a lot of parties. So
Really?
a lot of people have been to the Beaver House, but
Right.
now
Okay.
it's not Bieber's house anymore. It's the
Right.
Waterfalling Estate. So I run that as a short-term vacation rental and have a lot of fun with that. And so it required a lot of love. So I've been fixing it up and renovating it. So my life's mainly been about restoring and renovating the last year. These are small businesses, so I can run them in my sleep pretty much with my experience. But I really rely on an amazing staff to help keep them going. So
Yeah.
I mainly raise capital, decide on the renovations, bring in the vendors, and then oversee the renovations while my staff run the businesses themselves.
Uh-huh.
So those are my two core businesses. But one of my ongoing Bliss journeys is I do inspirational writing, as you know.
Yeah.
I do long form inspirational writing, and I attend to that pretty often. I just came off a 40-day water fast,
Yeah.
which to a lot of people was my life's biggest accomplishment. I drank only water with Himalayan sea salt for 40 days, and then did another 20 days
It's
with
totally it's phenomenal, man.
slow reintroduction to food. So I gifted myself a completely new gut. I lost 65 pounds and just a new
Incredible.
lease on life. I eliminated diabetes, got my blood pressure right. So that was probably my favorite Bliss journey last year that I'm continuing to be on because I have a very different mindset than I did. When you don't eat for 40 days, your mind changes. Like if you don't eat for 3 days, I don't think too much happens. But in 40 days,
40
you're not
days,
going
man.
back. You're not
Seriously.
going back to a former mindset about food. So the next fun one though is I'm looking to get a gig at the Summer Olympics coming up in LA in a couple years. So I've always had it in my bucket list to work in Olympics,
Uh-huh.
mainly because I love inspiration, and that is the pinnacle in the event industry, which I'm an event producer at the end of the day. So I almost did it in the Atlantic Olympics coming out of college, and I never got the gig. And so now I'm gonna try to network my way in. And I don't need to run the Olympics, right? But I don't want to be the security guard at badminton either. So I want to be something in the middle, maybe something in logistics. And so I've just started to reach out to my contacts to see who wants a 30-year veteran of events to be added to their team. And I don't need to do anything company related. I'm just going to take a job, maybe live in LA for that year. And then after that, I'm going to move to Italy, and I'm going to end my it'll be 30 years at that point as an entrepreneur. I'm going to wrap up my 30-year entrepreneur career and call it a day. Not to retire, but just to stop being an entrepreneur
When do you intend to do that? Sorry?
in 2 years, 2 to 3 years. So I give myself the end of that third year because that'll be the completion of 30 years. So I've been an entrepreneur for 28 years.
Yeah.
Nobody's written me a check except myself for 28 years. So
And do you anticipate that you'll last more than 7 days?
I do. I do.
Sitting at
I
Lake
think
Lake
with
Como,
my
like after your 30-year
7
run.
years of Bliss coaching, people struggling to exit and going through all the emotions to exit, I do think I'll be ready in the same way. Like I'm not comparing myself at all right now, but when you're like a pro basketball player, you decide to go out of one of three ways. Either an injury forces you out or you get cut by your team. Number two is you announce that you're going on, then you get the farewell tour. So when
All right.
Kobe announced he got the farewell tour, they gave him gifts at every stadium that he visited for the last time, and all the fans came out. And then the last way, of course, is not tell anyone, just cold turkey leave.
Yeah.
Right. So I feel like given that I'm saying that the next 2, 3 years will be my last. It resets my frame. Like, okay, most important is to go out on top
Yeah.
because I've got investors. I want to make sure that I go out on top. Then, secondly, I want to fly around and I want to visit people that have helped me along the way, and I want to look them in the eye and I want to give them a gift rather than what Kobe got from the league. I want to say thank you. And so my mindset is really clear, and I'll be ready this time. I'll be 58. I'll be ready. And Italy is specifically sought for their culture around bliss and being, right? To
Yeah.
leave that American way of doing after 30 years to go just be on the lake, enjoy myself, walk around, have great cappuccino, meet people, espresso and gelato, and really just, embrace myself in the Italian way, learn a new language, and just stop doing on the
Hmm.
entrepreneur front. So I'm going to put myself in an environment to win this time, not
Hmm.
an empty backyard in
Yeah.
Silicon Valley
In
where
Silicon
everyone
Valley.
around me's working, right? So,
Yeah.
and then after that, I'm going to do cool stuff. I'm not retiring. I'm not going to create one more LLC the rest of my life. I have enough. I've done enough. If I have to, I don't know, hire a CPA to do taxes one more time, I'm just going to jump off a cliff. Like, it's the
Yeah.
administrative side of entrepreneurism that I'm going to be very glad to move
Yeah.
on from.
Yeah, no
Yeah.
doubt. So what's been the most blissful aspect of your career so far?
I think my work done my way, that was something that I read in an Amaran novel when I was a 20-something-year-old, and I really committed to. And I appreciate that I can create with my mind and then manifest stuff to come to fruition. So I'm very proud of the number of times I've had a dream or a bliss journey and that I've successfully navigated it. And it's never been easy. People think it's easy. They see you slaying your dreams again and again and again, and they think it's easy, but it's never easy. It's hard. And so I'm really proud of the grit behind all of that. But I, there's so much, but I think when I started Bliss Champions, I stopped sacrificing joy. So I think
Hmm.
I'm most proud of the fact that even though it took me 20 plus years as an entrepreneur, I finally came around to the fact like, nah, it doesn't have to be linear. You can achieve all the things you want to achieve, financial freedom, time freedom, without sacrificing your joy or your health or your peace.
Hmm.
And so that would be my message to most is quit doing that. It's not true. You could have 7 different chalices and drink from each cup every day if you so choose. But if all you're going to drink from is one chalice, then that's financial freedom. Yeah, you're going to grind and everything's going to be wrapped around that as you watch your marriage go away, as your kids stop talking to you, as your joy goes out the window, right? You don't even know how to dance anymore at a wedding because you're just so locked in on being an entrepreneur and achieving one thing, right?
Hmm.
So that would be my gift to people and why I started Bliss Champions. And we made a real difference in people's lives. I can't look back over hundreds of customers and say that we helped an entrepreneur transition from one large company to a larger one. I don't think we actually have that win, but I sure can look back and be like, we reintroduced a lot of entrepreneurs to their joy, and now they're having a better life. I can
Yeah,
say that for sure.
for sure. Yeah, well, I can attest to that personally.
Yeah. And when I meet, the big swinging, what's these days of entrepreneurism, I'm ready to stop going to entrepreneur hangouts. You and I have been to many, and we've been within that tribe, right? I'm ready to stop going because in the end, I want to stop introducing myself that way, right? I no longer want to introduce myself as the guy, kind of like Jim Carrey quit acting. He's like, I played that role really well. I did to the best of my abilities, and now I'm going to be something else. And people sometimes struggle with that, but I've been an entrepreneur for 28 years, but before that, I was an athlete for the first 22, right? So it's not a death sentence. It's not a life sentence. Like, you can change and do different things. And so, that's the thing with exiting is not being afraid to be something new and
Mm,
stop trying to live up to your last exit.
mm.
Who cares? Move on from it. Nobody's sitting back going, oh, I'll see if Chris A will do that again. Nobody cares. The only entity that cares is your ego. It nobody around you is doing that. Everyone around you just wants you to be happy for the most part, unless they're not your fan and they root for your demise.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's a process of getting ever truer to yourself, or ever more aware of who you are at the core, without the labels, without the.
Well, yeah. I think it comes down to who are you going to follow? You're going to follow your ego, which has the attributes of a court jester and does not know the pathway to peace, joy, and happiness. Or are you going to listen to your soul while your ego's screaming all the time? Your soul's trying to whisper and give you the answer,
Yeah.
but we don't learn to listen to our soul enough. We listen to our ego, and the ego's, wants it to be easier, quicker, financially rewarding in its own way. And the soul sometimes has the real answer most of the time.
How do you listen to your soul?
Usually by getting in nature, getting out by myself. Or in my case, I fly to Patrick Holmes's house and then he
Yeah.
helps me gain
He's a good
clarity
conduit.
on what's already in my soul. And he's
Yeah.
almost like a filter for my soul.
Yeah.
He just did it again for like the fifth time. And this time he did it while his short-term rental was being invaded by bees, and he
That's well
didn't want to
that.
kill the bees. He was trying to smoke the bees out. So here I am. I was all dressed up to go to this TED talk with him. That's why I flew in, because one of our former customers was doing the talk. I'm all dressed up and he's like smoking me out. So he's got smoke all over his hair and his clothes. He's getting smoke on me in my nice outfit, but he's giving me these pearls of wisdom. So I'm like,
Take it.
it's so worth it. I got to take it. So I went to TED talk that night smelling like smoke, but I had clarity.
Right.
So however you get it, some people get it from reading books, listen to podcasts, whatever your source is, whatever your modality is. Some people get it by taking psychedelics, right? So there's so many modalities that can help gain clarity. Self-awareness is the first step to all personal development. And most people just get stuck there.
Yeah. I remember you talking about this in the past. What's your definition of self-awareness in that context?
Self-aware is when you can look in the mirror and really admit to yourself what the actual problem is, not just give excuses or I'll start tomorrow
Yeah.
or I don't know, imagine it's really something different. Like people that join the gym on January 1st and then don't go
Yeah.
ever,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So you know, I used to joke I didn't treat my health really good until just recently, but I'm an excellent dreamer. So when people would come to get coached to be a dreamer, sometimes I would say to myself they were super fit. I would go in my mind, I wouldn't say this out loud. I go, oh, they are to their dreams as I am to my health and fitness, and
Uh-huh.
that enabled me to step into their shoes, right?
Empathy. Yeah.
Empathy. Yeah. And so that was where I was able to, okay, well, I might be a dream slayer, but that person's super fit. I want what they have. So
Yeah.
that's the point where when we stop judging and comparing and we have a little bit of empathy, we can start to understand a little bit better and grow together.
Yeah. Wonderful. Awesome, Eric. Well, this has been wonderful, man. Thank you so much. Again, really appreciate having you on and
Yeah.
sharing so many pearls of wisdom.
Yeah, I thank you. And I'd say for all of you listening at home, if any of this resonated with you, chances are if you're struggling either right before selling your company and you're doing crazy things like jacking up the price, it's because you're scared, right? And then also, if you've already sold and you're stuck and you're just continuing to be stuck, what you need to be looking at is fear. You're dealing with fear at a really intense level, and it's trapped inside of your body. So there's all kinds of great modalities out there for releasing yourself from fear. But that's what I would encourage everyone to do is to break through that fear and get unstuck. That's job one.
Yeah.
All the other stuff will come easy. Yeah, all the other stuff will come easy to you.
What's the number one way that you found to be effective in breaking through that deep fear?
So clarity really, that word is really important. So that's the answer to your question is how do I overcome fear? How do I overcome being stuck? I seek clarity.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
Nobody goes anywhere without clarity. You just stay stuck. You
Yeah.
keep looking in the mirror and bullshitting yourself.
Yeah.
But once you're clear, you're like, okay,
Yeah.
and then other things hold you back. Other things like belief, lack of courage, and so that's your mountain climb, but you're not going anywhere until you get clarity. I know that.
Yeah, that's great. Well, that might be a good point to end it on. So,
All right, buddy.
mic drop. Thanks again.
Love you, Chris. Thanks for inviting me to be on. Really enjoy it. And I wish you all the luck in the world with this Bliss journey.